I don't know if you've noticed, but when we used to work together in the studios, I would just be asking you mad questions while you're working on the projects. Like, I don't know if you probably remember. I'll be like, "Yo, so who was like the wildest artist you ever had in here? Like, what's the most fucked up story? Like,
it's pretty standard.
What's the weirdest dude you've ever had in here?" Just because I was like, I'd never even been in a studio before, so I'm in a studio with someone has so much time in studio. So I'm just like, yo, trying to get all the juicy stories out.
There's a lot of weird stuff.
And it's all technical questions, like, what the fuck are you doing there? And you're telling me about these plugins, it does this shit, and then it gets to a point where I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. So like, I got some other questions as far as just your career, some stuff between our music, and expands out just to you in general with your clients.
Mm-hmm. Shoot.
So one of the ones I have is, we've done 5 projects together over the span of 3 years.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've grown to expect when I approach you for a new project?
Up to a point, there definitely were some expectations that I had that sort of left, and now my expectations are more set up instead of like what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Though you have sort of had this like style of mixing you've expected me to do, where you're like, mix this like that one, is what you write in the notes, like, make it sound like that other one you did that one time, which is great. That helped me. But in the beginning, one thing that was difficult for me was you wanted so much reverb on everything.
I forgot I used to do that.
So much reverb, which is fine, it's hard to work with because it changes, but that was one thing that I was like, okay, I have to remember, like, I gotta have reverb on all this shit. And once I'm comfortable with how much reverb I have, I gotta turn it up.
Yeah.
That I used to expect that, but now what I expect more so is that you're gonna bring me home at the end. Mm-hmm. I'll do a mix, and like, I think maybe there's one on this project where that didn't happen, but I know I've reached my limit with what I can hear on the track when I'm mixing a track in a single day, and I'll send it to you, and I expect you to tell me like, great, this sounds good, I don't like this, this isn't exactly how I picture that, and that's what I need. Like, I feel sort of insecure about the track until I get that feedback from you, and even if the feedback is like, this isn't the direction I want to go, that makes me feel much more comfortable. And that's good because I know to expect that from you. When I'm mixing with somebody, for somebody who I don't know what kind of feedback I'm going to get. I don't know if they're going to be like, this is trash, I'm going to somebody else. But with you, you're going to be like, hey, can we actually change these things? And that is a comfortable feeling. And I know to expect that it's not the end of the world if I'm not confident in my mix, because you will be able to direct me to a place where we can both be happy. And that's easy for me. I like that. I like that feeling of like, okay, I'm going to mix this. If I can't get it right today, we can work on it and we'll both be happy eventually. No, or Cyanide, as it was in the demos, was one track where I just accidentally sort of threw the faders up, like getting it set up, and then I was like, I think it sounds pretty good. And you're like, yeah, that track sounds practically done. Like, I don't know what you could even do with it. And that was rare and unexpected, because I don't know very many mixes where I'd gotten you been like, yeah, cool, well, that was it.
That's the thing too, is I like that same type of conversation is like, I got to a point where originally I would send you hella notes right off the bat. And then I got to a point where I'm sure, I don't know if you noticed this, you'd be like, notes, question mark? Like, I'd send you a song, and then he's like, I'm working on this today. I'm like, all right, bet. And you're like, so anything you want me? And I got to a point where I was like, I already knew, like, I had in my mind, like, all right, I already know it'll sound kind of like this. I kind of know his style. And if I would only say things preventatively, I would say like, hey, I want this melody or this instrument to be a little more prominent, because I know if I don't say that, that might sound a little more backgroundy just based on
the bells.
That's one of them.
I'd be tugging the bells sometimes.
Exactly. So I'll say stuff like that, but nowadays it's to the point where like, unless it's a note where I'm like, hey, I got a vibe of this type of artist, or I'm going for this. Unless it's something like that, a lot of times I'm just like, all right, do your thing, and then
that has changed.
Then I'll add some notes here and there from where you go with it, because to a degree I'm just like, all right, I already know, for the most part, where this is going to end up sounding, and I'm already cool with that. You know what I mean? Where before I was so meticulous on, all right, this, sending all these notes to begin with, and then you work on it. Then I'm like, all right, tweak this. Now you're like the same part of the, what we were saying earlier, just being a little more relaxed and more trusting in each other's ear too, because we've had songs where we've gone back and forth. I'm like, hey, can you turn those strings down? I want to hear the guitar, and you're like, no, I'm gonna take a solid stance. I want those strings where they're at. And
it happens.
And then so. Songs like that was for Sun Will Rise, and at the time I was like, all right, well, turn the fucking strings down. And I was like, all right, word. But then I was like, you know what, man, after a while, it's kind of, you know, I'll trust his ear. You know what I mean? He's listening from a different perspective. I was like, and it's kind of like, do I really want to take the chance of putting the song out and then everyone thinking like, oh man, if these strings were a little louder, this would have been better. You know what I mean? Like, who do I want to please, myself or the listener? You know what I mean? And so that's definitely one of those. That's why the notes got a little not strict, less tedious. Yeah. You know, less minuscule. More just because like I'm like, all right, well, you know, I'll just let him do his thing, and then we'll work from there.
I feel like honestly, like I would prefer to have notes. You don't need to, but but when I say notes with people, which is so funny because some people like, I need at least the tempo. If you could give me the key, if you could break down what the elements of the song are to you, like if you tell me like I got intro, verse, pre-chorus, chorus, half of a chorus breakdown. If you could list that out for me, just so I know what the parts are, and then I could sort of get in your mind to like, okay, each of these parts is supposed to sound a little different, sort of go with the flow of the song. Because some people send me stuff where it's like, it sounds the same all the way through. And unless you told me like, you know, I had to listen to it a couple times before I realized like, oh, this is a repeating part. I got to make this work like that. But if I have at least a tempo, I'll be good and I can figure it out. But if you send me a song and you're like, I want to sound like Kendrick Lamar on Damn. I'm like, oh, okay, that gives me a very specific fucking vibe, you know, compared to if you just said, make me sound like Kendrick Lamar. I'm like, when? What Kendrick Lamar? Like, pick a decade.
We talking to Pimp a Butterfly? Like, you know, like, we talking, like, am I putting 808s? Am I not putting 808s? Like, is this going to have jazzy chords or not? Like, what the fuck?
You want someone yelling in the background? Like
nasally vocals? Like, what the fuck do you want from this?
I need that. That specific stuff helps me sometimes because not always can I just load up the faders and go like, oh, I hear what he's going for. But I will make it work. I don't need it, but it's very comforting to me for you to be like, I want to sound like Earth Gang on this track. I'd be like, oh, that is a specific thing.
Some wild shit. Okay, well, we're going to have some fun with this.
Got it. You know, and then I try to do my best to make it sound like that. But yeah, I guess you're right. The notes sort of did stop coming in. It's sort of just
because I mean, I guess I could do a little better right off the bat. But just I'm like, all right, I already know I'm gonna get some, it's gonna be good no matter what.
Thank you.
Usually it's just me not critiquing and making the mix better. It's always creative with me. You know what I mean? And that's why even when we're talking about it, I'm like, sometimes I'm like, hey, I want these bells up because you know I like those Glocks. But then like sometimes it's like, hey, can we turn that piano melody up? But I mean, if it fucks up the mix, fuck it, I'll live with it. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like usually I feel like my best notes come from after that first or second mix. Once you get it, you know, where you're feeling it, then I'm like, all right, this here. All right, boom. But yeah, like we've been saying this already. Like it went from super tedious to like I've been more relaxed. I guess it's more trusting.
It went from a manual to suggestions.
Yeah. And then it was just like, am I just hella lazy? Like, am I just like, fuck it, how it sounds. But then I'm like, I had a whole bitch fit over my mic not sounding how I want to. No, I'm not lazy.
I don't think you're lazy, but I will say that we've definitely both grown individually and together. You know, like you said, we were collaborating a lot more. We feel more comfortable with trust with each other and stuff. And if you suggest something, I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm no longer like, that's going to ruin it. You know, and if I'm like, this might make it sound weird, but like for the most part, with this song, any changes you suggested, I think I was like, all right, I think that it's fine now, but I could hear what you're trying to hear. Like putting myself in your shoes is also very important to me too, because am I mixing for me or am I mixing for you? Like I have stuff where I'm like, I think this isn't going to translate is my issue, but it's like, if you listen to like the last 3 Kanye records, like the depth on that shit is weird as fuck and that shit slaps. So like, I'm like, all right, let's see what you got. What do you want me to do? Like, I don't know. You probably know better. You listen to music, you want it to sound how you want it. Like I said, you're the expert on your stuff, but yeah, the notes have definitely changed a bunch.
Let's see.
Oh, and I can also expect boom, 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 boom.
I toned that down a bit though.
You really did.
This one I toned it down.
You really did.
There was a point where I was like, fuck, I should have had a little, like at least 1 or 2 more though. That's my Bay Area influence. That's that fucking, and yeah, exactly that. Like that's my little, if it's not like a super Bay Area synth bass track, even if it's a more hip hop one, like I'll have that fucking little 4-note boom, boom, or 4 bar, not bar. bar. Well, you know what I'm talking about.
I know, yeah. Just 4 hits.
That little 4 thing, and then I'll have my little, it's Persuadeo, like, and Potluck, I was doing that shit all over the fucking
Every
place.
fucking song had that shit.
I dug it, though. I'm like, man, I love this.
It created a vibe for that project.
Yeah.
And now that you kind of sprinkle it in here and more, it's like a reference. Because I don't remember it being there that much in the earlier albums.
I would do it like once a song. Or one, like, I did it, I think, on Different Cloth and Breakfast. I did it in, I think it was called 1,000 Times in Seconds. And I remember you had pointed it out because it's definitely not like a Bay Area inspired song, but it was more of a moody, emotional song. And I remember you being like, oh shit, that's almost like that fucking, some Mac Dre shit. And I'm like, and that was one of those moments where like, fuck, I do that. And the real shit, I do that even when I don't put it in the song. So Thomas has noticed this a lot.
It's how you start your beats. The 4
No, not like that. Not like like you would call the Neptunes. How it always starts like that. Not like that, but like if I'm making a beat and I always have different parts of it before I arrange it. Like so, it'll be like this same beat, 3 different things. I'm like, oh, is that gonna be a chorus? Is that gonna be a bridge? I don't know. And I'll just be playing it, and I'll just click on one of them for like at the tempo, like dun, 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 and I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And I wouldn't even always add it. And Thomas was like, bro, you always do that shit. I'm like, what? He's like, I'm always expecting you to add that. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that fucking dun, dun.
It is a pretty staple thing.
He's like, you do it all the fucking time when you're just fucking around with it. I'm like, fuck, I never really noticed that. And when I start my beat, I go, or if like, for instance, it's playing and I want to hear how the transition sounds, I go. When I go to click on it, acting like I'm doing some cool shit.
Hey, as long as you feel good. There's that one J. Cole song where he hella has the...
Oof, I know what you're talking about, but I can't.
Was it Get Off My Dick?
I know exactly what you're talking about, but I'd have to round back, because otherwise we're going to see it for 5 minutes.
Yeah. But he hella does that, and I remember being like, ooh, how dare you use that? Like, that is too good.
All right, so another question. Personally, I struggle with listening to my older work, especially in instances where I've improved greatly since the creation of that work. Looking back, do you ever struggle with listening to older songs you've mixed and mastered in the past?
Yeah. It's rough.
Yeah?
Because it's like I mix to the best of my ability then, and it does sound good. And then I hear it, and some of the times I'm like, damn, I killed that shit. And sometimes I'm like, the fuck was I doing? What the fuck? And a lot of it goes into I wouldn't say the headspace I was in, but the sort of the rooms that I was mixing in sometimes, and like how things would translate. And like every time I change rooms, you have to learn that room. And that sucks. That sucks hard. Because essentially you can't trust what you hear. I had a spot at Whiskey Dick, and we had these 2 speakers there. The Event 2020s, and I mixed everything on them in that room, and I got everything sounding good. And then we got these Yamahas NS8s, and then I was like, I got to learn how these new speakers sound in this room. And then we switched studios, and then I had to hear how that shit sounded. And then I switched studios again, and then I got to learn these new speakers, the Adam Audio's S3As, which are massive speakers, and the room is super different shaped. And then I'm like, I got to go through that. And there's always like the mixes all sound good. I'm like, okay, I hear what I'm going for. It's legible, but it's like now I would make a completely different choice. But it's also because I've done 1,000 mixes since then. But there's always that beginning, the learning curve in the beginning. It wasn't until I got my own mixing space here in my house that I was finally comfortable with like everything that I did, because I had the ability to
control the environment.
I could control the environment. I could take a step away without the pressure of like somebody coming in or anything happening. And I could listen to it in my headphones. I could listen to it in my Bluetooth headphones, my over-the-ear headphones. I could listen to it on my TV. I could listen to it in my car. I could listen to it on my girl's speaker. I could listen to it on my phone. Everything was accessible. And I can't do that at the studio because there's clients there. I'm surrounded by people, but now I'm comfortable.
You're talking about, the room you're in affecting the project you make. You know what I mean? Do you remember all the bullshit we went through making my Seconds EP?
Yeah.
Like, that EP is probably, I don't even listen to it anymore.
Oh, no.
Because has nothing to do with sonically. It was subject matter. The songs I was writing at the time, they came from this place that, like, I needed to get it off my chest, but like once I made it, I look back, I'm like, I'm not even trying to get in that mood. And Isabel has said that's her favorite, but she's like, but that shit is depressing because she knows me. Her and Thomas know me probably the best. So they know exactly what I'm saying in these songs and what I'm referencing, different parts. But they both admit like, yo, this shit is fucking good. But the beauty in the whole situation is like, it's just this content of what I'm feeling inside is so ugly. And then it just made fucking sense that once I bring it to the studio, everything's fucking going wrong. You know what I mean?
I hate when that shit happens, man.
And I'm like, at the time I was frustrated, but I was in the mindset. I'm like, yeah, I'll bet that this makes sense. But like in the same way that me making those songs was me getting through shit personally, that was us getting through it. Like, you know what I mean? The whole, from me going through experiences to write these songs all the way up to us going through experiences to fucking get it done so I could put it out. Whole fucking time was a struggle.
It was.
You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't have made sense if we went through that struggle while I was making Lunch, which was a bunch of positive, braggadocious, inspiring, rap songs.
That's crazy how life do that.
It wouldn't make any fucking sense if we were having those struggles there. But on seconds, but there's such a beauty to that. So even while I don't even want to listen to it, just because my involvement in it, I look at it, I'm just like, it's almost like being nostalgic of a shitty situation. But I'm like, man, like, it's not even a testament to me of the art as much as the dedication to make the fucking art. Because, man, the room we were in that week, and you were going through shit.
Yeah, that was a rough time.
But that was right around the end of working in that studio, if I'm correct. Because I remember having conversations with you where you're like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be working here much longer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I remember thinking of that, and I was so wrapped up in my own shit at the time, but I was just like, damn, bro, like neither of us are really like in the best.
But we did it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
We did it.
I was like, neither of us are in the best mind state to be doing this shit right now, and of course the computer's gonna start crashing. I was like, neither is the equipment.
Yeah, everybody was noping out of that for sure. That was a rough patch for sure.
But there's this a beauty in that to me. Of just how the project comes out. You know what I mean? Out of these wildly shitty situations.
I mean, I wouldn't say that the beginning of Dinner was super shitty, but I did feel very bad and guilty about and the fact that we continued working on it and everything got better. Like, honestly, every project that I work on of yours, I feel like every time it gets better and better, just all around. Everything, the performance, the beats, the sonic quality, my mixes. This is the loudest project I probably ever mastered. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm smoking some shit. I don't smoke, actually. But it's so crazy, and it feels so good to know that we have overcome all of those struggles and all those weird times, and we're still here, and we're still doing it, and the music is more kick-ass than it ever has been.
Well, that's the thing, too, is what you were saying about learning the rooms and stuff. Like, it's hard for me to say because I know I've improved, like you were saying, from each project. So it's kind of hard to use that as a reference. But I do personally think that the mixes sound better from this room.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, but I mean, of course, I feel like you're gonna have a bias because you built this studio. You know what I mean? Of course, you're gonna be like, because you fine tuned it to yourself. But even from my perspective, I was thinking like, damn, like I thought it was gonna hinder our progression, us not being able to work together in person. You know what I mean?
Very fearful of
because
that.
when the pandemic started and we couldn't be in a room together like this safely, it was like I was like, fuck, I'm still gonna be sending them shit, but I don't know. We had done 2 songs like that just out of time. I wasn't able to come out and I wanted the songs done, and it worked well. But I was like, a whole project. A year later, 2 full albums. Like I didn't think it would work that well.
It works surprisingly well, and I'm so glad that it does because it was like. I was really worried, because I was like, I invested all this time and money into this place, and I'm like, God, I hope people are comfortable doing this.
I absolutely think that, if even if I'm trying to remove like the fact that like you're saying, I was saying, put hella reverb on the vocals, and that that could have arguably made the music not progress as well because I wasn't evolving and I was adding this factor that people don't normally add to this extent. Like, of course that's going to affect the mix. But like, even if I'm taking that out of it, just how the mixes have been coming back, I definitely think this area has been my favorite as far as receiving mixes.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree like wholeheartedly. And it's like, It's shocking. It's honestly shocking to me.
And as far as first mixes, like, you know, I mean, some songs we finish off of like 3 or 4 mixes, some of them fucking 12 mixes. But I do remember how the mixes sounded, you know, first batch of mixes for, you know, Breakfast. Like they're cool, but they weren't at the quality that they are now. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so when I get a first mix from you, I'm super comfortable when I listen to it. I'm like, all right, we don't have that much, you know, it's not that much work to be done. To where the other ones, yeah. And like you say, it's a testament to learning the room and when equipment changes that you don't have control over.
Yeah, I hate that. And it sucks too, because it's like everybody hears differently too. So like when I be in these rooms and I'm like, God, I remember feeling like I was going to go deaf in some of those rooms because the sub was so loud. Like I don't even have a sub now. And I just turn my shit up and dial the bass in and turn it back down. But it was like, that could have been affecting my mixes and hurting me. Like those rooms were tuned not very well. They had too much bass. Now I probably don't have enough bass, but
it was dope to be there.
It
as
was
the artist,
dope to
you know what I mean?
there. Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like when I was up in there, you had a lot more lights.
A lot more lights.
You know what I mean? Like it was the
vibe.
The vibe
the
was
ambiance.
dope. You be having the fucking bump, like the beats knocking. I'd be like, whoo! I feel like, I mean, you know a lot more technicality, you know, aspects about it than I do, but I feel like that could even hinder it too, because you could be seeing like, man, that shit bumping in here, but like it might be giving you a false, you know, reading, you know, of how it's really sounding.
I hated that.
You know what I mean? Like you're just sitting like, yo, I'm in the studio and this shit's bumping right now. Like, you know, this shit knocks. I'm hearing everything. And then you get out there, listen to all the other stuff. You're like, oh shit.
No, I absolutely could not stand that feeling. And it sucks too, because it's like right before that studio closed down, we had adjusted everything. I had like learned so much being with the other guys at the studio and just experience and learning and experimenting. I was so confident in my mixes. And then I had everything at the same time. Oh, it was like so rough because I was going through so much at that time. And then I had to go on tour. And then I came back and the studio was gone. And then like my best friend was in the hospital for months and I was just broken and I couldn't even do what I knew how to do. And I didn't mix for like a year. There was like a whole year of my life where I like wasn't really mixing, and I started a new job at the studio, and it sucked because it's like right before that moment, I was like, I think I finally got this shit. I'm really figuring it out. And then I just lost that ability now. And that was horrible.
So, you know, it's a trip you even saying that, because we're talking about how Seconds was such a rough patch for both of us. I didn't work with you until September of 2019. So you're saying that whole chunk you were barely working on projects at the time, or?
No, we worked together before 2019.
No.
For Seconds, you mean?
No, Seconds was the end of Audio Lodge. And then that was the last project we did for about 9 months.
And then when you came back to me, I was working at that spot in SF.
But that between time, that's the time you're talking about right now. If I'm
pretty much, yeah.
So that's the trip I'm talking about. Is I couldn't, you know, it was only 6 songs, and you know the pace I make songs. I don't know if you remember, but when I hired you for lunch, I only had 3 songs. So it took that whole 9-month period where you're explaining that you were struggling. I was struggling in a different way where that was probably the longest time where I wasn't writing.
Wow.
I was writing, but trash.
We were going through the same shit.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like you're explaining how you were barely mixing at the time. You were having to relearn things. I
feel like Eminem, bro. I hate to say that, but I felt like Eminem.
No, because so you listen to this though, because I just made Seconds super emotional, vulnerable, negative. Lunch is anything but that. I wanted Lunch to be slappers. That's why I pushed it to make Seconds, because I wasn't in the headspace. That whole 9 months up to us working, I was trying to write slappers and positive stuff, but I wasn't positive. I was struggling. So and I'm sitting there like, how could I do this? I was like, maybe I should, as a person, you know what I mean? I was like, maybe if I worked on myself as a person and tried to progress, you know, emotionally, maybe I could progress with my music. And that's exactly, and then so I hit you up and I was like, there's going to be a gap where like I could work for these couple weeks and then I'm fucking booked. So I was like, all right, well, we'll do 3 songs and then fucking I'll hire you in a couple months once I write the other ones. And then when we start, I don't know if you remember, we're working on those 3 songs. And I'm like, hey, do you got time for me to add another song? Hey, do you got time? I just once we got in that swing, I was writing songs within a week, which I don't normally do. I don't normally make a song that fast. Like I make a beat, I'd rap on it. Hey,
I do remember this.
Hey, I'm sending you stems, and you're like, all right, I'm going to fucking school right now, but okay, dude. And then I'm like, hey, I got another one, man.
I like that feeling, though.
But you know, like it's just a trip to even. I didn't even realize. I knew the parallels were there. That when we were mixing seconds together, we were struggling. But I didn't know the parallels.
19 minutes.
All right. I didn't know the parallels were going to keep going like that all the way through to the next project we worked on together. That's a trip.
It is kind of a trip, but it's nice to know that we were on the same page without being on the same page, honestly.
Yeah.
Unbelievable how we could just be fucked up and be around each other, not even realize it, work on it, have the same feeling from the same period of time. What a crazy thing.